Hello, this is SK Williams, and this is another test run of my walk and talk idea. I intended to do 2 prototypes and 1 episode 0. The episode 0 will be sort of the first episode, but not really. The first episode will, of course, be episode 1, and episode 0 will be the first one that I assembled, in the hopes of having all the formatting and other topics sorted out. I might still make changes between episode 0 and episode 1, and for that matter may tweak episodes as I go along, but I'm hoping episode 0 will be the genuine prototype of the series, while not being entirely inside of it. However, this is not the second prototype I intended. In a way, you could argue it is, therefore, the second prototype and I will have 3, but I don't view it that way. You see, this is a test run animation that I did shortly before finalizing it with the version I've already shown. This was animated before that, and this was a saved file with the old animation. It makes me look rather like I'm limping, and it is also shot from further back. And the reason I'm saying all of this is because I don't intend on overlaying the original audio onto this new footage, because I find that redundant, but I also don't want this to be a second commentary in the same vein. I very much want this to be understood as the first prototype, because that is what it is. It is the first prototype's initial animation before I cleaned it up, and before I decided for a tighter shot closer to the head and shoulders. Thus, I view this as Prototype 1, Version 2, or Prototype 1.5, whichever way you wish to see it. It is essentially Prototype 1 Part 2, at least in terms of the audio. The audio was produced second, though the animation was, as I stated, produced earlier, and was later cleaned up in a later saved file. I did not realize I still had this one saved, and that I had changed the name of the second one. But this is not the second prototype, this is the first prototype in continuation. But I still think that I should talk about a few issues. Issues that you're probably not going to listen to anyway, because I have just wasted time telling you what this is. Wasting time like that often drives off viewers. But it is important sometimes to stick with a video longer than 2 or 3 minutes or 30 seconds and see if it catches your interest. Sometimes something gets better as it goes along. Sometimes you just have to clear the preliminaries out of the way. That is no justification, of course, for needlessly top-loading the front with superfluous information. You should get to the point of your video relatively rapidly, so that the audience does not have to feel they are wasting time listening to the first part. However, I only took a couple of minutes to explain the animation, and again, this is clearly titled a prototype. So, you should actually wish to view it, in part at least, to see how my show is developing. And yet, I'm going to bet many people don't. Many will just hear the first part and leave, and a few people will stick around to hear the rest. And that is an interesting aspect of modern culture. We seem to want instant gratification, and don't seem to have the ability to delay gratification, to put off our sense of reward. We want it now, we want it immediately. This shows up in the most popular thing discussed on YouTube, entertainment, but it also shows up a lot in religious videos, including the videos put out by people who follow the religion of atheism and insist they have no religion because atheism isn't a religion, it's a lack of belief in a god. They don't want long explanations. Indeed, I spoke to many militant atheists whom would ask me questions, which, let's not kid ourselves, they never ask questions, they make attacks. And they never attack you with something that they actually know or care about, they are simply repeating the attacks they've heard from other atheists. Nevertheless, they phrase their attacks in the form of a question in the hopes that you can't answer it, and thus exposing that religion is a lie, because to them religion means Christianity. The problem is that I have often answered their questions, and quite often the answers require a great deal of elaboration, because the thing that they view as very, very, very simple is in fact very, very, very complex. And it goes to things that you would perhaps agree with them initially are simple, like slavery. The militant atheist points to the fact that slavery is condoned by God in the Bible, and it is wrong to own people. They will ask the Christian, do you agree with your God that it's okay to own people? I'm more moral than your God because I don't like owning people. Look at slavery, and it's reduced to that, and it seems reasonable to reduce slavery to that, except it's not. For one thing, the very people who are reducing slavery to just owning people themselves understand slavery from a cultural background in which it doesn't just constitute owning people. It constitutes tying people to posts and whipping them. It constitutes racism, since white plantation owners are going to own black African slaves. It constitutes an understanding that innocent Africans are captured by white slavers and taken across the ocean to serve other masters. But that wasn't slavery in the ancient world. Slavery in the ancient world was not based on race. You do not have white plantation owners owning black slaves. And indeed, even though today we revile slavery as one of the greatest evils, and would think no one would wish to be a slave, many people sold themselves into slavery, and did so because slavery would improve their lot in life. Not simply because they were beggars and poor and could not feed themselves and slavery would give them food. Perhaps you could understand that. You would still find it loathsome, but you would understand it. Base survival. No, I'm not talking about that, though. I'm talking about a man who is wealthy enough to buy bread for his daily consumption, wealthy enough to have a place to stay at night, wealthy enough to be able to survive. And yet, who becomes a slave of his own volition, because becoming a slave will give you more than just survival. Being a slave will lead you to having contacts with other people. It will lead to your master introducing you to other people. It will lead you to gain business contacts. It will lead to alliances with families. It could even lead to a political career. And all of this sounds very foreign to us, since slaves don't have political careers. Slaves aren't seen as people, they're seen as animals. And we see it that way because we are viewing it through the lens of the slavery as practiced in America in the 19th century. But slavery in the ancient world was nothing like slavery in the antebellum South in the 19th century. Of course, telling atheists this gets you the usual response of, slavery is slavery. It is the same no matter what. You're just making an excuse. And perhaps I am. Perhaps I'm lying about what I just said. But if you look at the history, you will find that I'm not lying. And I'm not just making an excuse. However, I'm also not here to talk about slavery. I'm here to talk about something else entirely. I'm here to talk about how people will often ask a question, but not really want an answer. Not only is the slave only interested in shaming you because of slavery, if you try to explain the history surrounding slavery, and try and explain the historical context in which slavery emerged, how slavery was actually more humane than the alternatives in many cases, such as imprisonment or just outright killing people, they are unconcerned. And if you write a lengthy post on the internet about it, with several paragraphs detailing an explanation of slavery in the ancient world, you'll get TLDR. too long, didn't read. They don't want to read your novel. But if you don't really want an answer, why ask the question? And how do I answer a question about complex sociological structures from the ancient Near East in only 1 or 2 sentences? They want a simple, yes, it's okay to own people, or no, it is not okay to own people. They do not want to discuss what slavery actually meant in the ancient world. They do not want to acknowledge why it even existed. They don't want to discuss it. They don't want to discuss what slavery actually was. They simply want to reduce it to our images of Kunta Kinte from Roots, being whipped by his master and having his foot cut off because he is black. That isn't slavery in the ancient world. Don't get me wrong. Christians will also do the same. I have seen Christians make attacks on Islam, and I would tell them those attacks are unjustified, and then I will try and explain through culture and history why what they're saying is not a really valid argument, and I will have the same sort of response. They don't want to read my long post about it, even though they want me to answer the question they have asked. This is indeed a problem that I see recurrent. If you want to defend President Trump, and I don't just mean as someone who voted for him, I mean if you think that a criticism of him is unfair, even if you voted against him or did not vote at all, those who hate Trump will often ask you pointed questions to which they do not want answers, and to which they are hoping your short answer will give them a venue for attack, and if you elaborate in any sort of detail, they will simply ignore what you are saying because they don't want a lengthy answer. They're not really asking a question to engage in a discussion, they are asking a question because they wish to attack you. And the same is true, of course, in the opposite direction, where conservatives who support Trump are against those who have perhaps valid criticisms of the man. Or when President Obama was in office, and you would find him attacked constantly by the same conservative forces who now support Trump, and making the same sorts of shallow arguments and not wishing to listen to any sort of answer that involves thought and understanding that would go on longer. We want our answers to be short. We want the videos to get to the point within the first 30 seconds or we're out. We want things now, and we want them in a simple, digestible format. In other words, we want fast food. We do not care that it will make us fat. We do not care that it will give us heart problems. We do not care that it will put us into an early grave. I don't want to spend an hour cooking a fine gourmet meal that is healthier and tastes much better. I want to go to the drive-thru and get my processed food that was made rapidly and to which I can eat rapidly. We don't want healthy food because it takes time. But as a result of not eating healthy food, we will not be healthy. And the same goes for the mind. To demand easy answers, to demand simple answers, is to never delve too deeply, and to not have enough patience to wait until a point unfolds. Well, that leads only to a sustenance of ignorance. Having said all of this, I believe that I shall sign off. This video is already over 14 minutes long, and the actual animation tract only lasts for 15 minutes. So it is rather appropriate that I end our little chat. So I will sign off. With due regards and hopes for the future. Thank you. God bless. And goodbye.